Hello friends, welcome to CEC Live Lectures. Dear friends, with our ongoing series on cloud computing, today we are going to talk on cost model of cloud computing, that is cloud cost model. And for the discussion on the topic, we have with us in our studios the eminent professor, and she is Dr. Kashish Ara Shakil. Dr. Kashish Ara Shakil, she is an assistant professor and she is teaching in Department of Computer Science and it is the Department of, I would say, Jamia Hamdard. And for the discussion on the topic, she has once again rich content for you. So let's welcome our guest, Dr. Kashish Ara Shakil, and let's try to have in-depth knowledge on cloud cost model. Hello ma'am, welcome to the lecture.
Hello everyone. In this series till now we have discussed about what cloud computing is. Then we discussed about what are the benefits of cloud computing. Then we also discussed about how the data is managed, how the data is stored in cloud computing, and then how is the file system in cloud, how does the data is stored in different files across different servers in a cloud environment. And since the beginning we had been claiming that one of the most beneficial part of cloud computing is that it offers a cost-effective and an economic solution. So, how cloud computing is cost effective, and in what scenarios we should go for cloud computing, and in what scenarios we should stick to our traditional ways, all this we are going to cover up in today's lecture. So, let's see what is the model of cost for cloud computing. In case you are going for purchasing of a package software, if you're not going for a cloud-based approach, what you have is you have an initial capital expenditure plus you have certain operational expenditure. There are several fixed costs which are involved, such as buying of licenses, then there is hardware, data center, maintenance of staff. All these are part of buying a package software. But the problem with such a scenario in such a system is that scaling is very problematic, because if a software is designated to a certain number of users and you need to scale it up to more number of users, it can be problematic. Apart from that, it can be problematic if you want to scale it for the higher dimensions of data. In such a scenario also it is very problematic. We have seen that how processing will take place in such a case where we encounter a scenario where data is in form of big data. So scaling, we said, is problematic because scaling up can be very expensive, because if you are scaling up you will need to purchase a new software for that purpose, and of course new expertise will be now required in such a scenario. And if you need to scale down your applications, in that case also it will involve a lot of cost, because you are now scaling down the inventory. So there will automatically be certain number of people who will be involved in scaling down of the application, because you are just tuning in your application. So in such a scenario, if you're going for package software, it is very difficult to estimate what the cost will be, because you are not aware that when the demand for these number of users will increase and when the demand will decrease. So it is very difficult to estimate the cost in such a scenario. And apart from that, there will be a very high barrier on the entry level. On the entry level, the barrier, it comprises of the initial capital expenditure which is involved, and of course time which is involved in setting up the initial software packages. Then you need infrastructure which can handle such kind of softwares, and then you need human resources to handle such kind of things. But if you go for a cloud-based approach, in such a scenario, the service provider will be responsible for maintenance of the hardware, of the data center, and of the maintenance of the resources. Resources in such a case will be the hardware, and of course it will also comprise of the infrastructure which is involved. And customer in such a case will have to pay only for what they use. So if you're going for a cloud based approach, there will be only the operational expenditure, because capital expenditure is not your problem if you are going for approaches such as public cloud like the ones offered by Amazon or Google. So you just have to invest in the operational part. So if you're investing on the operational part and not on the capital part, what you're saving on? You're saving on the infrastructure, you are saving on the human resources which are involved in maintaining this kind of infrastructure, plus you are also saving on a lot of time which is involved in maintaining this infrastructure, then management, all these things, they need a lot of cost. And if you're going for cloud based approach, scaling is also simple, because you don't have to care about buying your new hardware or new software when you need more resources, because everything is taken care of by the cloud service itself. So cloud, it offers you a horizontal scalability. You don't have to invest in any new infrastructure. What you need to do is you just need to pay certain extra amount on the basis of the amount of resources you are going to use. So there is no initial investment of any sort in terms of hardware, any software, nothing. You just have to click, go to the service provider, and then you will be getting all these services. Apart from that, costs are very easy to estimate, because in case you are going for a package software, you're not aware that how many more users you might be needing for that software, or how many less users you'll be needing. So the cost in that scenario, it became very difficult. But if you're going for a cloud-based approach, in such a case, it is very easy to estimate the cost, because you'll be using the cloud computing for a certain amount of time. And of course, all the cloud estimations, the cost estimation, everything will be taken care of the public cloud service provider itself. And these service providers, they have different mechanisms for calculating these initial cost or whatever cost based on your resources. How it is calculated, we'll take up a case study of Amazon in the next few minutes. And apart from that, another advantage of cloud is that it has very low barrier of entry. Low barrier of entry means you do not have to invest in the initial capital expenditure. Whenever you need cloud resources, you just make a click that I need these many resources, and then you get these resources. So there is no initial barrier on the entry level. So why not go for data centers the traditional way? So if you are going to build up a data center in a traditional manner, what you have to do is you will build up the data center component by component, and each of this data center will comprise of different components which need to be handled separately. So if you're ordering and shipping, that component is handled separately. Packing, unpacking, maintenance of different racks, maintenance of the cooling system, everything is taken care of by the data center. So everything has to be done in a traditional manner, component by component, and it will involve a lot of skilled labor, because data center, it requires certain skilled expertise which is not available with everyone. So they need certain specialized skilled experts who will be taking care of the expertise. And if you need to scale up your data centers to handle larger number of users, in that case also it will need a lot of cost for increasing the capacity of the data centers. But a better option for maintenance of the data centers is to maintain the data centers module by module. So each of the data centers, it will comprise of somewhere around say 1,000 of systems, and the data centers will be maintained in a module wise manner. So it is easier to maintain such a data centers, because there will be you will not require any separate electricity connections or cooling mechanisms. You will not be needing any unpacking or installing, and this initial setup is very easy, very fast, and modules, whatever the modules are you are building, you are using to set up your data centers, they are not serviced during the life span. Why they are not serviced? Because due to a high number of systems in the modules, and the modules which get old, they can easily be shipped back. So you are going to save on the initial cost if you're going for a module by module approach in maintenance of data centers. And if you need to scale up your data centers, in that case also you do not need a very high expenditure or any high cost. What you need is, you just need very little service and installation, and in this manner you save on the economies. So you will, since you're not involving any kind of infrastructure cost, any kind of inventory cost, etc., so you will be saving up on a lot of money, and the entire cost of entire economies of scale will go down. And since we are going for module by module, the assembly of each of the modules can be easily automated. And of course, if you need to store certain module information, then you will need some extra challenges in this case, because you will not get things like failure free operation, because they are not replaced. So do you think in such a scenario, is cloud a good option, or we should stick to traditional package softwares, traditional data centers? So it depends upon the use case. If you have, say, if you're going to use a software or a particular package for a dedicated, a very fixed number of users for a very, very long time, so in that case, the traditional approach of buying a packaged software, a traditional data center, would be a better approach, because you are going to use the software for, say, for a very long time. But if you're going for a cost-based a cloud-based approach, in this case, the cost, it will be very high, because you are going to use the cloud services for a very long period of time, and ultimately the cost will go up to a very high amount if you're using it for a very long period of time for a large number of users, because you're going to pay every second of the cloud services which you are using. So in such a scenario, it is better to stick to the traditional approach. In such cases, traditional package softwares are more economical than the cloud based. But in case it is not fixed about your organization, the softwares you are going to use, the number of users you are going to use, the amount of data you are going to store, it is not fixed. It can go up, it can go down, it is not fixed at any particular point of time. In such a scenario, cloud comes up as a better approach, because you don't have to worry about scaling up the software just like a traditional system, and you do not have to increase the number of users access to your traditional software like a traditional system. So in such a scenario, cloud computing offers a better approach. So will it be economical to buy a couple of virtual servers for everyday use from cloud? So initial cost would be lower, but is that relevant? Do you really think that it will be more economical if we just go for virtual servers? Because if we are going for a certain number of virtual servers, like I already explained, if we are not fixed about the number of users who are going to use these virtual servers, then in such a scenario, cloud would be a better option. But if we have a fixed number of users who are going to use the software for a large period of time, in that case, traditional approach would be a better one. So, in both the scenarios, initial cost will be low if we are going for a cloud based approach, but it is up to us, depending upon our use case, which we should go for, whether we should go for cloud or we should go for the traditional approach. But apart from the initial setup, if we are going for a normal approach, there will be if we are going to use virtual servers, there will be certain cost of, required in maintenance. So, we do not have to just think about the initial setup. When we are going for a package software, we also have to think about another point to be noted is the maintenance. What are the maintenance costs? Because maintenance has the highest cost in the long run. So, if the maintenance cost of your package is low, go for your package software, but if it is having a very high maintenance cost, then why you need to worry about just buying a package software? Why not go and opt for a cloud service, which and everything would be taken care of by the cloud service provider itself. For example, so we just talked about buying the servers ourselves, then maintaining the servers ourselves. So, just buying a server ourselves would cost around say $1,000, and for maintenance we need to hire a technician, which might cost us about $50 per hour, $50 per month, depending upon the expertise which is required for the repairment, for the maintenance of this. So, we need to take care of the initial server cost as well as the cost for maintenance of the software as well when we are going for a traditional approach. And when we are acquiring a very small numbers of servers from cloud, it is not necessarily very economical. Like I just talked about, it depends upon your use case. If you need, if your usage is not fixed, and you might sometime it is very fluctuating, sometimes you might need more resources, sometimes you might need less resources. So, in such a case, cloud occurs as a better approach. But if your usage is fixed, in that case it is better to go for package software. But of course, you have to take into mind the initial expenditure plus the maintenance cost. So, if you can just run up into your mind and see if your initial cost plus the capital expenditure plus your maintenance cost, if it is less in the package software, then go for the package one. But if it is more, then you should better go for the cloud based approach. And of course, if you are opting for cloud based approach, it has other advantages as well, such as it offers high redundancy leading to failure free operations, high availability, scalability, then it is highly reliable. Apart from that, maintenance will not be your headache, and it offers high availability and geographical independence, and it offers any kind of failure free from any kind of natural calamities, disasters, because the data it is replicated across several servers. So, which one you should go for, cloud or a traditional one, it is up to you. But in the long run, cloud has several benefits in comparison to the traditional approach. So, while maintaining the cost, we have to take care of other costs as well. What are the applications in which cloud is used? Cloud is basically, it is used in development of many applications across providers like Amazon, Google. They use Google file systems, then they use Hadoop distributed file systems for management of data. All these things we have covered up in the last lecture on cloud file systems. Then if we are going for cloud based approach, then what we need, what we get is the most of the applications, they are they have been built before. These applications are ready made for you to use, and what you need to do is you need to just go and purchase that kind of application from your favorite service provider, whether it is Google, whether it is Amazon. You just need to go and purchase it, and the application is ready made and it is available. But if you're going for a packaged software approach, in that case what you need to do is you have to build up everything from scratch. You need systems, you need to install the software, you need to ensure if it is a cluster, you need to maintain a cluster, you need to install your software on the different clusters, you need to be sure that each of the clusters, they are talking to each other. So all these things, when you are going for a traditional approach, all these things, all these costs should also be kept into mind. But if you're going for a cloud-based approach, everything is ready-made, it is highly available to you. What you need is you just need a click of a button to access these capabilities. Then of course, if everything is ready-made in cloud, it will save on a lot of cost and a lot of time as well, because there will be a lot of time which will be consumed initially in maintaining of the infrastructure, in setup of the softwares which we require, and of course it will be requiring a lot of skilled expertise, because every software, they need a different kind of expertise for installation, for maintenance. So all these costs will also be involved if you're going for setting up an application on a traditional system or a cloud-based approach. So if you go for a traditional approach, you need to take into mind that you are responsible for all the maintenance of the software, all the infrastructure, and after that also for the management of the entire package. But if you're going for a cloud-based approach, you save on all these costs of maintenance of the infrastructure, as well as the maintenance of the cost of the resources, and you do not have to build everything from scratch. We can also use internal services as cloud. So we said we have been talking about public cloud service providers like Amazon, then we talked about Google File Systems, then we talked about Google, then we talked about Rackspace. All these are public cloud providers. What they do is they provide you computing in form of services, and you have to pay for whatever amount of services you are using. But that is a public cloud provider. You can also have internal services of your own by maintaining a private cloud setup within your organization. So many companies, they do have their own internal clouds wherever they think that it will be a better option, it will be more economical to go for a private cloud setup. Then in such a case, there are several organizations who set up a private cloud instead of going for using resources of service providers like Amazon or Google. What they do is they have a private cloud within the same organization. They usually use all the commodity hardware which is lying redundant, unavailable. They use these commodity hardwares, and they set up their own private cloud within their organization. So in such a scenario, you need to take care of whether a private cloud is better or a public cloud is better. So if you're going for a private cloud, again you have to take care of all the maintenance part, all the infrastructure part, all the setup, everything has to be taken care of by the company, by the organization itself. And of course, they can also run a business on top of this private cloud. They can offer these services of these private cloud as public services to other organizations. So in that case, private cloud can be a beneficial and a better option. So if you are going for internal services, then what happens is it will increase control to resources and adds accountability, because everything is like within your organization, and then it will have certain direct cost saving, because you are now going to use everything which is within your organization. You are going to utilize the infrastructure of your organization in a better manner, thereby achieving better economies of scale. How cloud is more economical than other services, and whether we should go for cloud or we should go for traditional approach, this discussion will continue after a short break.
Ma'am, thank you so very much for giving us this session. Friends, you're requested to be with us as we are back after a short break, and we are going to give you more on the topic. Thank you. Hello friends, welcome back to this session. Friends, as you know that today we are talking on cloud cost model, and for the discussion on the topic we have with us in our studios Dr. Kashish Ara Shakil. Dr. Kashish Ara Shakil is Assistant Professor in Department of Computer Science and Engineering, Jamia Hamdard. She is a prolific professor. Through her we always get in-depth knowledge on various topics of cloud computing. So let's welcome our guest Dr. Kashish Ara Shakil once again, and let's try to understand more about the topic. Hello ma'am, welcome back.
So we've been talking about how cloud computing is beneficial, and in what scenarios we should go for cloud-based approach, where it is more economical, or whether it is more economical to go for a packaged software. So we have seen that of course cloud, it saves on the operational expenditure and the capital expenditure, but there are certain scenarios where cloud is not always a beneficial approach. So, but in most of the cases, cloud is an economical approach, and it saves on about 80% of the cost of the business organizations, because usually organizations, they have a large amount of data, they have huge resource requirements. So if they go for cloud-based approach and save on the capital expenditure, then it is more economical for them. And of course, just like we discussed, that cloud is not always a cheaper option, and but in most, or it is not always a cheaper option, but it is mostly the cheaper option. So that we need to take care of, in what situations we need to go for cloud, and in what situations we need to stick to the traditional package software. In addition to the dropping in the unit cost, cloud can also reduce the entry and exit time into the market, because cloud and business, for business organization, everything is business. So, and everything is profit. So if you are going for a reduced cost approach by using cloud, you will also automatically reduce on the expenditure time, the initial time for setting up your organization, for setting up the infrastructure. And as we all know, time is money. So if we save on the time, we'll be gaining more benefits, we'll be gaining on the expenditure which is involved, and thus we'll be having better cost savings and better way of and a better edge in running our business. So let's see how cost analysis in cloud can be done. We can do cloud cost analysis using a tool which may be a software, which may or which can be any package which can be designed to assist companies to minimize the cost of purchasing their cloud-based resources. So in most of the public cloud you go for, they have their own cost analysis tools through which you can estimate the amount of money you are going to spend if you're going to use cloud-based approach. These tools, they provide you a very valuable insight into how a business uses its cloud computing resources normally. So if you are going for a cost analysis tool, and cloud computing cost model, it basically tells you how the cost of the cloud computing resources, it increases with increase in the number of resources which we are going for. So apart from that increase in cost, you are also gaining somewhere down the line better on your business in terms of agility, in terms of elasticity, and in terms of value. How companies are optimizing cloud costs. So since we talked about that cloud computing, it offers a better approach, and but in cloud, every single second of resource you are using, it is going to add up on the cost. So how you're going to minimize that? By utilizing, by monitoring how your resources are being utilized. So this saves on around 45% of the cost for both large enterprises as well as for the smaller business. Then we can also automate the shutdown on the temporary workloads. So if you're not using any workload on the cloud at a particular moment of time, we can just temporarily shut it down automatically. That also saves on the cost. Then we can shut down the workloads for a certain number of hours. So we can just keep a track that at one particular point of time, if your cloud service provider, it is offering services at a very high rate, or maybe at a particular point of time, you as an end user, you need very minimal amount of your resources. What you can do is you can shut down the usage of your resources for a certain period of time. So that will save on the cost. Then you can also select the region from which you can access the cloud services, because cloud service providers, they offer you instances, they offer you resources across different regions across the globe wherever they can provide you services. So you can choose a region which is more economic depending upon your requirement. Then you can also go for instances like spot instances. In case of Amazon, what spot instances are, we'll just look. So what is the cloud pricing models? So we have a different variety of models which are available in the market depending upon the different software services which we are using, different platform services which we are using. But before we are going for opting any particular kind of resources, we need to ask our own self some question. We need to ask that for how long we are going to use the cloud computing resources. Then we need to be sure that what will be the cost of upload of data. So if you have a lot of data movement, you need to be sure that what will be the cost of upload of the data, what will be the cost of movement of the data across the network. Then if your application, it requires a huge amount of storage of data, you also need to be sure of what is the storage cost. So these are the questions you need to keep into mind before going for a cloud-based approach. You need to understand the amount of the cost of the resources. You need to understand the storage cost Plus, you need to understand how much the cost is involved in case of network transfer. So there are different service providers which are available at present. We have Amazon, we have Google. So these service providers, they have different pricing models depending upon the kind of resources you are going to use. So if you're going to use a very high end resource, say for example a resource having 1 TB of RAM, so you need to pay a very high amount of cost. And if you're going to use a resource which requires which offers very less computing, then it will be having less cost. For example, let's have a look here at Amazon EC2 compute pricing model. So Amazon, it basically offers these services in form of different instances. What are these instances? We'll just look in a couple of minutes. So here what we have is we have different instances, like we have T2 nano, T2 micro, T2 small, and we have M4 instances which are for memory intensive applications. So these instances, they have different costs. So for example, if you are going for T2 nano, what T2 nano does is it offers you computing services for in form of one virtual CPU. And in such a case, if you're going for a Linux based operating system, in that case it will cost you around 0.0065 per hour. Then from T2 micro, it will be a higher cost, for example 0.0013. Similarly, if you're going for a higher configuration instance, for example say M4.X large, what M4.X large offers is it offers you around 4 virtual CPUs. In that case, the cost is even higher. Let's have a look at how Google is providing these services. So Google also offers services depending upon the type of machines you are going for. So they have N1 machines in form of N1 standards. So we have N1 standard 1, N1 standard 2, N1 standard 4, N1 standard 8, and so on. So if we are going for N1 standard 1 kind of machine, then we are going to pay around $0.015. But if you're going for N1 standard 32, which is a machine with 32 GB with 32 virtual CPUs, you have to pay a higher amount, that is $0.480 per hour. So this was the different pricing which is being offered by the different service providers. So the pricing, it depends upon the kind of resources you are going for. Apart from that, you can also compute the pricing based on the resources and the amount of memory storage you want. Then another approach in cloud, generally this approach is followed by Amazon. In Amazon EC2, they have this spot market pricing approach. So spot market pricing, they have slightly lower cost, and for example for N3 instance, you have to pay for 0.0591 per hour for a Windows instance, and for a Linux based instance you have to just pay $0.0098 per hour. And apart from that, we have Azure, which is offering you cloud services. So in case of Azure also, they have services based on the configuration of machine you are going for. So this is chart. It basically shows us how the different cost of the services varies across different service providers like AWS, Azure, and Google on-demand pricing. What you can see from this is it is very difficult to judge that which cloud-based approach which we should go for, whether we should go for Amazon, or we should go for Google, or we should go for Azure. So what you need to do is you need a particular kind of tool which can guide you through that, okay, you need to go for such and such services. So in these kind of scenarios, what you can leverage is you can leverage the advantage of this cloud cost model which is offered by different service providers. So it's basically a kind of interface which is being provided to you on the service providers page, where you can calculate the resources, and on the basis of your resource usage you will get a monthly or a daily estimate of the cost you are going to acquire. So you have to choose which providers have the lowest cost options for your cloud computing instance, and depending upon your circumstances. So you need to take care of, you need to choose which service provider to go for very wisely. Then, like we said, that if we are going for a cloud based approach, you also have to take care of the licensing of software. Some softwares, they are provided bundled with the application which is available, but in case you need certain more softwares, then you have to take care of the licensing. So cloud environments, they keep company with the prices bundled with the instance. So what are these instances are the machines which are being provided to you by the service providers. So cloud computing, cloud environments, they keep the prices bundled with the instances for the common in operation systems and software system packages. So just like we had a look, like we saw that there are different costs for different softwares. So if you are going for a Linux system, you are going to pay a different amount for the very same configuration of CPU, of memory. You are going to pay different amount if you are going for a software such as Linux, and if you are going for an OS such as Windows, you have to pay a higher amount. So the software cost, the licensing cost is bundled with the kind of resource you are using, with the kind of instance, with the kind of machine you are using. So apart from that, you can use certain open source softwares on top of your cloud service which is being offered to you. Beyond open source, best listing model is that one charges by the CPU hour. So first, it depends upon the cost of the kind of operating system you are using, which is bundled with the machine you are using. Then after that, you have to take care of the amount of CPU hours you are going to use. So that is something which you need to take care of. So in the cloud market at present, there are different pricing models which are being adopted. Some offer cash as you go or pay as you go model. In such a case, the different kind of instances which are being offered are on demand, spot pricing, reserved instances. These are all offered by Amazon. Then you have committed VM instances such as prepaid VMs. Then we have recurring VMs. Then we have resource pooling options also. Then we also have an option of credit as you go. So what you can do is you can use subscription credits in such a kind of cloud pricing model. So in these kind of models, if we have committed VM, we have resource pooling, we have credit pay as you go. In such kind of models, there is a large upfront cost, and of course cash and pay as you go model. In these kind of models, there is no upfront cost. It depends upon your usage. And apart from that, the cost is metered. So what does metering means is that you are going to use the you are going to pay only for the amount of time for which you are going to use the resources. So that is all metered in a pay as you go model. Apart from that, unit pricing is fixed for all the kind of cloud pricing models except for the spot pricing model. Apart from spot pricing model, what spot pricing model does is you need to bid for the resources in case of spot pricing model. So in that case, only the unit price is not fixed, it is variable. So these are the different pricing models which are available, 4 different pricing models which are available in the public cloud market at present: pay as you go, committed VM, resource pooling, and credit pay as you go. So AWS, we have been talking about a lot about Amazon Web Services. a lot. So what is the kind of pricing model which Amazon Web Service goes for? Let's have a look. So Amazon pricing, AWS, it basically offers pricing in form of a pay as you go model. That is, you pay only for the part of the services you are going to use, without, for as long as you require them, and you do not have to make any long term contracts. And in pay as you go model is like we have already explained what a pay as you go model is in the previous lectures, that pay as you go model is something similar to utility computing. That is, it is similar to just paying for electricity at your home. So if you are going to use computing instances for say an hour, you are going to pay accordingly. If you are going to use computing instances say for seconds, you are going to pay accordingly. And of course the kind of instance you are going for. So you just have to pay as you are using the resources. If you are using high resources, you are going to pay more. If you are going to use less resources, you are going to pay less. So everything in this kind of scenario is metered in a pay as you go manner. So like we just talked about on-demand instances, reserved instances, spot instances. So what are these instance types? Well, in case we are going for a public provider like Amazon Web Service, the model we are going to adopt is pay as you go. Then the different kinds of machines which are offered, or the different kinds of resources which are offered, are in form of instances. So the resources which you are going, the machine you are going to buy, in case of a public provider like Amazon, that machine is called as an instance. So there are different ways in which you can acquire this machine, this instance. One is on-demand pay instance. So in case of on-demand, you have to pay for the compute capacity by the hours. So if you're going for one, using a computing resource for 5 hours, you are going to pay accordingly. And there are no long-term commitments which are involved. Another model is reserved instances. In case you make a low, in this case what you do is you make a one-time payment for each of the instance type you want to reserve. And in these kind of instances, you have you can receive a certain kind of discount on an hourly charge for that instance, but of course it will be more expensive than the on-demand one. Then the last another model is spot instances. I just talked about what spot instances are. In case of spot instances, what you do is you have to bid for the unused resources which are available at Amazon EC2, and you run for those instances as long as your bidding value is minimum. So one approach is you can just use instances on demand, that you can make a demand that I need such and such instance at this particular point of time. You can make an on demand instance. So for that the cost will be higher. Then you can reserve an instance for say a few hours. In that case you can go for reserved instance type. And the cheapest one is the on spot one, in which you can bid for the usage of resources, and that resource will be available to you as long as your bid is the lowest in the current spot price market. So cost saving considerations which need to be taken care of in case of AWS provider is the primary discounting technique for resources on AWS is reserve instances, wherein what you're doing is you are reserving the instances for a particular duration of time. So reserve instances, they are not your actual, not your real instances. In fact, they are a kind of, you can say it's a kind of discount coupon that can be applied to instances that meet certain boundary conditions. So if you are buying a reserve instance for a particular zone, say China, so what you can do is you are going to pay for the kind of services which you have reserved in advance for yourself. It is just like you are booking for some kind of deal. So if you have booked, you have liked a particular kind of deal, that okay, I'm going to use these services which are being provided to me by this kind of provider in this zone at this particular time, then I will go and I will reserve that instance. So it will lower down on the cost and you can end up in getting kind of discount. So reserved instances is a cost saving approach and a more dependable one in comparison to the spot instances. And if you furthermore you require purchases that require committed usage, then you can go for direct instances. So this is a snapshot of how the AWS service account it looks like. So Amazon Web Services, it offers you a lot of services for free. I think it is for 1 month. What you need is, they do take your credit card details, but what they do is they provide you with all these services. So computing in form of EC2, storage in form of S3, then they offer different databases, networking, analytics service, etc. So these are some of the restrictions of the free usage tier which you can go through on the Amazon web page itself. Then like I said, Amazon, they have using Amazon, what you can do is Amazon's reserve instance, you can save on the cost. So if you are going to buy an instance for say 1 year, you have to pay for say $0.095. Then if you're not paying upfront, and if you're paying all the cost upfront, then you have to pay $0.081. So it just saves on. What I mean to say here is that if you have a requirement where you need computing resources for a large period of time, you need to go for Amazon reserved instances rather than going for an on-demand instance. So it will offer you a cheaper option because it will offer you certain kind of discounts. But if you think that you are going to use resources, you are going to need the resources only at at some instance of times which is not fixed, then you can go for the on-demand one. So I had also talked about that each of the public provider, they have their own interfaces for calculating the cost. So you can have a rough estimate of the cost which you are going to require by going to their own something called as cost model, computing cost model of a particular service provider. So for example, in this slide we have a snapshot of AWS cloud cost model estimator. So it's a simple monthly calculator where what you can do is you can choose the kind of services that you need. For example, if you need to use Amazon EC2, so you can select Amazon EC2, then you can choose the region. So what Amazon EC2 does is it provides you services on the basis of different kinds of regions. So you can choose the kind of region. For example, here we have chosen US East Northern Virginia. Then you can choose the kind of instance that you need. You can use Amazon instances. Here they can be anyone like R1 instance, M1.x large, M4.x large, the kind of instance then you need. Then whether you need a dedicated host, then the kind of EBS volume you need, and etc. After that, what you will get will be a rough estimate of the amount of cost that will be involved in using such kind of services. Apart from that, so this will give you a brief idea about how much cost your cloud service is going to make. So a simple cost model in cloud computing can comprise of as low as 0.010 cents if you are using the Linux instance. And apart from that, it also depends upon the software you are going to use, the tools you are going to use, then other kinds of stuffs like what software you're going to use on top of them, etc. So all those things have to be taken care of. And apart from that, what kind of return on investment you are going to get if you're going for cloud-based approach, then that also you need to take care of, such as, for example, on-demand instances. They will allow you to pay for computing capacity by hours. Then we have reserved instances in which you can make a one-time payment, and then you have spot instances. So the kind of instance that you want to use, that you can choose. The kind of service provider you are going to need depending upon your requirement, that you can choose. And these are the things that you need to take care of before estimating the cost in cloud computing, before going for a cloud-based approach. These are the things you need to take care of before attaining any subscription for any cloud service provider. I hope by the end of this lecture you would have a brief idea about how the cost is being calculated in cloud-based approach, and in what scenario cloud will be more economical, and in what scenario a package software would be economical.
With this one, thank you, ma'am. Thank you so very much for giving us this session. Friends, you are requested to write to us at info.cec@nic.in if you have any query or feedback. We are going to meet again very soon and would be discussing more on cloud computing. Till then, take care. Goodbye. Thank you, ma'am.